So in this video, I want to talk about a few philosophical aspects within Buddhism that, in understanding, could possibly be useful for people who are finding it hard, let's say, to reintegrate parts of their personality due to possible, let's say, traumatic experiences from the past that either weaponized their character in some way to inflict against them, which made them feel some sort of shame or develop some sort of fear towards their own self and authenticity. So in relation to reintegrating, let's say, specifically, let's talk about the creative spirit, or that part of oneself that will bring happiness. I want to talk about, or at least refer to, the 5 kleshas in Buddhism, because understanding them can bring us understanding on a wider scale to the 5 roots of pain and suffering from the Buddhist perspective. Because a lot of our pain and suffering in the Buddhist perspective of asceticism and mind over materialism is actually produced in the head and is something the ascetic Buddhist would try to overcome in many different ways. So in reference to this, the adverse rejection of creativity, let's say, from an individual may perform itself through the person, or maybe someone might be experiencing this through the person by developing maybe an egoic barrier of defense via a desire for external approval from others, which isn't exactly a true desire, but one of acceptance for security by others due to past experiences. So you may say that this entire structure of negative feedback, which blocks out the creative spirit, which they truly want to reintegrate within them, may cause them internal suffering, whereby the entire existence of this barrier of approval may only be predicated on the fear of external judgment from past experiences, or that it is to chain away their internal potential so that it does not get used by others to attack them. So with this situation, the person possibly may find themselves being a doormat for others, or someone who feels as if they are being used easily because external approval from others is at least reliable, or it becomes reliable and becomes the place in which one would rather go for safety. It's secure and it's safe, which is the complete opposite of how their creativity or authentic individuality was treated by others in the past. Which leads this to relate to the klesha of ignorance, as they say in Buddhism, or avidya, when it comes to making conscious the understanding of the difference between what temporality is and what eternity actually is in life, in relation to reintegrating this specific part that has been lost within them, or the creative spirit. Because realizing this once again, because it probably was already known before, but due to this emotional backlog, it's probably misunderstood or disappeared, actually in life, in relation to reintegrating this creative spirit, will actually help with getting back in touch with their true selves in a way, at least philosophically giving that framework. For example, change as a fundamental existence in reality is an element of life which will continue on for eternity, right? Thus, to reintegrate the creative soul is to gain the insight of perspectivism, so that one does not get blindsided by the turmoil of the past and designate it as objective eternal truth, because it isn't eternal. The past experience of someone isn't eternal, so the person shouldn't perceive it as eternal. But perspectivism gives the individual the ability to see differently as to what is true. That what has been experienced in the physical world in the past will never again be repeated twice. That is the truth, because change is the fundamental premise of reality. The same reference to Heraclitus when he writes something like, "You cannot step into the same river twice." This kind of idea. So what can also be realized from this insight is that your individual soul, or your authentic soul that you may have started to push away, is the eternal element within, not the trauma of the past. which is hard to deal with. That your creative spirit throughout your human mortality will always be with you in the present moment, in the future, and in the past. The thing in which you love, basically, within will always be with you. The thing that makes you authentic will always be with you. But it is only taken away in this situation when one gets consumed by the klesha, or this specific klesha in Buddhism, of ignorance, and ignores the reality of eternal change. But it is only taken away when one gets consumed by this klesha of ignorance in the Buddhist sense, and ignores the reality of eternal change, which is the fundamental premise of reality. So, for example, when the strong negative emotional attachment instead blinds the individual down a path of illusion, and this klesha will bring and continue eternal suffering until it is understood, basically. Thus, there is no need to be afraid of this spirit that lives within the person, that has suddenly become a fearful element of themselves that they want to run away from due to past experiences. This animated soul that brings forth life, because it is the eternal friend, if you will, which you can always trust, because it is the only thing that's there for eternity within. It's always going to be there to allow for your creative expression and existence. Thus, the attachment that one may have made to this egoic boundary of I, that castrates the creative soul for the sake of external approval, which you may have thought would bring you happiness, is realized to be that which does not and will not actually give you or bring you happiness. But that happiness is related only to the internal factors from within, and how you accept them as true, because that's the only thing that really is true to oneself, to understand. That happiness and a content grounded character is, in a sense, dependent on accepting one's own internal factors as the only truth that one can know, which is like the know thyself, Socrates, Greek phrase that you often hear in philosophy and things like this. Thus, by realization, you initiate integrity for the self through this realization, and its abilities whereby confidence in oneself and for oneself will develop, because you know that that is the only thing that is truly real within you and to be experienced by other people who care and appreciate its expression. So when it comes to self-acceptance or re-acceptance, it seems to be that attachment to the harsh emotional past that included the trauma is what makes someone unable to gain the needed insight of what reality actually is, which is itself, again, the avidya klesha in Buddhism. So when that is realized, the insight gained from that can then also internally be applied to the other kleshas in Buddhism, such as attachments, or raga, or abhidvincha, if I'm saying it right, I don't know, which in this case would be the fear and anxiety towards accepting oneself for who they are and all of this. And this is something I think that happens from maybe in a case of narcissistic abuse, but if the person comes to understand the 5 kleshas in Buddhism philosophically, which are the 5 roots of pain and suffering that are associated to the mind and developing maybe possibly illusions related to past experiences about reality and how reality works, then their problem, or in relation to trying to reintegrate a part of themselves, once again, it can help them to understand that frame of mind which doesn't commit their past experience as a final judgment of one's own character, and that a healthy, correct perspective is to understand that most things really mentally are about developing an unlimited frame of mind and potential which doesn't constrict oneself into a time capsule, if you will, which lives by a set of negative attachments, memories, fears and anxieties. That instead consistent change is at the heart of reality in itself, and that peace can be found within that when it is understood, basically. Because when done, or when realized in this sense from the Buddhist perspective, all or at least many external attachments that were made will become futile, because you will then realize that those are not pieces or true pieces to the puzzle that will lead you to happiness, but only how one accepts oneself within, which leads to the understanding that the only thing that truly matters or is true for oneself and it is external is that which is within and is the only thing that someone can trust and gain confidence with. The only thing you can gain confidence with is the internal part of yourself. And if you don't accept that, but live by these, if you will, illusory preconceptions of how reality is going to play forth for the rest of your life, then you're not going to develop that happiness, because the happiness, or at least grounded sense of self and confidence that is to be embedded to develop, is found within. It's not found anywhere else. So that, in a sense, is my answer, or at least some sort of perspective you can gain from to reintegrating any part of yourself, or the creative spirit, as I like to reapply those ideas for people to look into, and for people who are struggling with those things. That attachment to all things of the past, fundamentally, which castrates the spirit, are illusory. Not in the assertion that it didn't happen, but by the fact that life itself does not repeat itself twice, and that you can never experience the same thing twice, so do not follow by these illusions, if you will. All of that which one has negatively relied on is thus temporary, and that the only thing that is not temporary and is eternal, if you will, is the thing which is being neglected and scorned by these past experiences that are remaining to be constant negative feedback loops. So an inversion of this understanding needs to be realized and performed in relation to those two things, which should allow in helping the reintegration of those lost parts of the self, or of those aspects of yourself that have been used to hurt you by others. If you enjoyed this video and you feel like it resonated with you on a level of magnitude, and you feel like procrastination is also something that you are dealing with, and you're always following and falling down a convenient path that is always easier and never actually good for you, and you want to break the cycles of procrastination that you're constantly in, and you want to stop giving yourself away to these easy, simple pleasures that don't fulfill you, and you want to work on developing your own decentralized freedom when it comes to building good habits for yourself, then sign up for a free consultation call down below with me, and we can talk about the methods and the techniques that you will need to know so that you can develop those aspects of yourself to reach a greater, higher potential. So with that said, make sure to click on the link in the description below, and I look forward to talking to you very soon.